Emma Winters, a young artist in her mid-20s, had always been captivated by the allure of color, shape, and the emotions that art could evoke. From the moment she could hold a crayon, she had found solace in the world of sketches and paint. But while her creative talent was undeniable, her life had been anything but easy. Raised by a single mother who juggled multiple jobs, Emma grew up learning the art of survival. They had moved from city to city, scraping by in small apartments with peeling wallpaper and creaky floors, just one rent payment away from eviction. Despite her hardships, Emma held on to her dream of becoming a professional artist, one whose work would grace galleries and inspire others the way great artists had inspired her. She poured her soul into every canvas, spending hours hunched over her small drafting table, losing herself in a swirl of colors and visions. But the world of art wasn't as welcoming as she had hoped. After finishing her degree in fine arts, she faced rejection after rejection. Gallery doors remained shut, and opportunities slipped through her fingers like grains of sand. Even social media, where many artists thrived, offered little in return for her efforts. She had followers, but not nearly enough to sustain her financially. Her self-doubt began to creep in. She questioned whether she was truly good enough, whether her work had meaning, or if the sacrifices she made were in vain. Every canvas she completed seemed to mock her with its emptiness. Bills piled up, and Emma found herself working a series of dead-end jobs to make ends meet. Between waiting tables, running errands for others, and late-night shifts at a local cafe, she felt like her dream was slipping away. Emma's friends encouraged her to keep going, but they had their own lives, careers, and successes to tend to. The world seemed to be moving forward without her. Every day felt like a battle between the life she had and the life she longed for. And on some nights, as she lay in her small studio apartment, staring at the ceiling, the weight of it all became too much to bear. Her art supplies, scattered around the room, no longer felt like the tools of a dream, but the remnants of something unattainable. It was during one of these low moments that Emma stumbled upon an old, leather-bound journal. She found it in a second-hand bookstore, tucked away on a forgotten shelf, its edges worn and pages yellowed with age. The journal wasn't just any ordinary book. It was filled with detailed sketches of landscapes, cryptic symbols, and a language she didn't understand. The pages spoke of a place hidden away from the world, a magical realm where one's deepest desires could be realized. At first, Emma thought it was simply an old artist's sketchbook, perhaps a whimsical creation of someone else's imagination. But something about it felt different. The more she flipped through its pages, the more it seemed to call to her. Weeks passed, and Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the journal was more than it seemed. One evening, as she sat at her drafting table, frustrated by yet another unfinished painting, she decided to take a closer look at the journal. As she studied the intricate sketches, she noticed something she hadn't before: a map. The map was hidden within the pages, drawn so faintly that it had initially blended into the background. But under the light of a fading sunset, the lines became clearer and a route began to form. The map was unlike any she had seen before, and something about it seemed to resonate with her. It showed a path starting from a park in her neighborhood, a place she had walked through countless times. But there was something strange, an invisible shortcut marked on the map, a path that didn't seem to exist in the real world. Yet the journal mentioned that the shortcut only appeared at a specific time of day, during the twilight hour, when the light of the setting sun meets the first glimmer of moonlight. Curiosity got the best of her, and the next evening, Emma decided to follow the map. She left her apartment and made her way to the park, the journal clutched tightly in her hands. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting the park in a golden hue, she walked the familiar paths. At first, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The park was quiet, the trees swaying gently in the evening breeze. But then, as the sky shifted from orange to violet, something strange happened. The air around her seemed to shimmer, and before her eyes, a narrow path appeared, leading off from the main trail. Without hesitation, Emma followed the path. It wound through the trees, twisting and turning in ways that didn't seem possible. The further she went, the more the world around her changed. The trees grew taller, their leaves glowing faintly with an ethereal light. The air smelled sweet, like honey and wildflowers, and the sound of distant music floated on the breeze. It was as if she had stepped into a different world. After what felt like hours, Emma emerged from the trees and found herself standing in a vast, open field. In the center of the field stood a small, crystal-clear pond, its surface perfectly still. Around the pond, the landscape was dotted with strange, beautiful plants that glowed softly in the twilight. And then, she saw it, a figure standing by the water's edge. It was a woman, tall and graceful, with flowing silver hair and eyes that shimmered like the stars. She greeted Emma with a serene smile. "Welcome, Emma," the woman said, her voice soft and melodic. "You have found the invisible shortcut." But Emma felt a wave of awe and confusion wash over her. How did the woman know her name? Before she could ask, the woman gestured toward the pond. "This is a place where dreams come to life," the woman explained. "Here, anything you desire can be yours. All you need to do is make a wish, and it will be granted." Emma hesitated. It seemed too good to be true, but the temptation was overwhelming. She had worked so hard, struggled for so long, and here was a chance to have everything she had ever wanted. With trembling hands, she knelt by the pond and made her first wish: to have her art recognized, to be a successful artist whose work inspired the world. As she spoke the words, the water of the pond rippled, and a soft light rose from its depths. In that moment, Emma felt a surge of power, and she knew her wish had been granted. The woman smiled, her eyes twinkling with knowing. "Your wish has been fulfilled," she said. "But remember, nothing in this world comes without a price." At first, everything seemed perfect. Emma returned to her life, and it was as if the world had suddenly recognized her talent. Her paintings sold for astronomical prices. Galleries begged to showcase her work, and her name became synonymous with brilliance. She was invited to exclusive art shows. Her social media following exploded, and her financial troubles disappeared overnight. But as time passed, Emma began to notice strange things. The more she created, the more disconnected she felt from her own art. Each new piece felt hollow, as if it was no longer hers. The joy she once felt while painting had been replaced by an unsettling emptiness. Her hands moved almost automatically, creating works that the world praised, but that left her feeling cold inside. And then there were the dreams. Every night, she found herself back at the pond, standing before the woman with silver hair. In these dreams, the woman would remind her of the price she had to pay for her success. At first, Emma didn't understand, but slowly, the truth began to reveal itself. With every wish granted, she had lost a part of herself. Her creativity, her passion, her very essence as an artist. The magic that had made her dreams come true was draining the life out of her. One night, unable to bear it any longer, Emma returned to the park and followed the invisible shortcut once more. She found the woman by the pond, waiting for her with that same serene smile. You were warned, the woman said gently. Nothing comes without a price. I didn't know it would be like this, Emma whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't know I'd lose myself. The woman's gaze softened. You can take back your wishes, Emma. You can return to the life you had before. But once you do, you will never be able to walk this path again. Emma stared into the pond, her reflection rippling in the water. She thought about all she had gained, but more importantly, she thought about all she had lost. The success, the recognition. It wasn't worth the price of losing herself. With a heavy heart, she made her final decision. I want my old life back, she said, her voice firm. The woman nodded, and with a wave of her hand, the world around them shimmered and faded. When Emma opened her eyes, she was back in her small apartment, surrounded by her unfinished paintings. The weight of the magical realm had lifted, and for the first time in a long time, she felt a sense of peace. Life didn't magically improve after that. Emma still faced challenges, and her art didn't suddenly gain recognition overnight. But she no longer felt the need to chase after success at the cost of her soul. She embraced the joy of creating for the sake of creation, finding beauty in the process rather than the result. And in doing so, she rediscovered her passion for art. In the end, Emma realized that the life she had, while imperfect, was enough. She had spent so long chasing after validation, dreaming of success that seemed forever out of reach, that she had forgotten the simple joy that first drew her to art. The frantic desperation to be noticed had clouded her original love for creation. Now, standing in the quiet of her small studio, surrounded by the familiar mess of brushes, paints, and half-finished canvases, she felt a sense of contentment she hadn't experienced in years. As the days passed, Emma threw herself back into her work, but this time, she worked without the pressure of external recognition. She painted not for fame, but for the love of painting itself. Each stroke of the brush felt like a reclamation of her identity. Her art, once infused with the desperate need to impress, became more personal, more intimate, and more alive. And then, something strange happened. Without even trying, Emma's work began to attract attention. Not in the grand, overwhelming way it had when her wish was granted, but slowly and organically. Local galleries started reaching out, curious about her unique style and the stories behind her pieces. A few patrons bought her work, not because she was a famous name, but because they genuinely connected with her vision. The validation that had eluded her for so long came naturally once she stopped chasing it. But this time, Emma was different. She no longer placed her self-worth in the hands of others. She didn't need the approval of critics or galleries to define her success. Her joy came from the act of creation itself. And anything beyond that was simply a bonus. She learned to appreciate the small victories, the way a color mixed perfectly, the satisfaction of completing a challenging piece, the quiet thrill of seeing her work hang on a wall, even if only a few people stopped to admire it. Emma's relationships also began to improve. She reconnected with friends she had unintentionally distanced herself from during her obsessive pursuit of fame. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. Quiet coffee shop mornings, long walks in the park, and evenings spent laughing with people who truly cared about her. The pressure she had carried on her shoulders for so long began to dissolve, replaced by a calm sense of acceptance. The memories of the magical realm, of the woman with the silver hair and the shimmering pond, never faded completely. Emma sometimes wondered what would have happened if she had stayed on that path, if she had continued to make wishes and pay the price. But she knew deep down that no amount of success was worth losing herself. The invisible shortcut had offered her everything she thought she wanted, but it had come at too great a cost. In the end, Emma chose the harder, slower road, the one that required patience, resilience, and trust in herself. And in choosing that path, she found something far more valuable than fame or fortune. She found peace. Months later, as she sat in her studio, working on a new series of paintings, Emma received an email from a well-known gallery in the city. They had seen her recent work and were interested in hosting a solo exhibition. It was an opportunity she would have once jumped at without hesitation, but now Emma paused. She looked around her studio, at the unfinished canvases that filled her space, at the sketches taped to the walls, at the quiet beauty of the life she had built for herself. This was enough, she realized. She was happy, content in a way she had never been before. The offer from the gallery was exciting, yes, but it didn't define her success or her worth as an artist. She was free now, free from the pressure to constantly prove herself, free to create for the sake of creation.